Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Indy Investor Pod. So the previous two episodes, I was able to sit down with some of the best flippers and reno guys here in Indianapolis. Now I'm going to sit down with some of the best people that are just known in the property management thing. And before everybody's like, why in the world would anybody want to be a property manager? We're going to dig into that a little bit. We're actually going to do two episodes here and kind of pick their brains a little bit more about the business stuff. On the second episode. On this first episode, what I want to dig into with these guys is really how can investors be successful working with their property management, with their portfolio, growing, being able to do what they want to do. So I have Elisha Drake on here with me, along with Joe Atha and Sterling Davis, three people that I really respect their businesses and them as people and what they're doing. So thanks a lot for joining me on here, guys. Really appreciate it. And with that, Sterling, let's start off with you. If you guys can, we'll start with you. If you guys can just give us a quick little like background of kind of like what you do, just like within a minute of like kind of your business a little bit, what you do within property management. I know Elisha, she's gotten out of that. She's doing her own properties and stuff like that. But Sterling, if you guys give us a little background on like kind of why in the world would I have you guys on here talking about property management, really?
No, thanks for having me, Brian. Always great to be part of it. One of the best podcasts out there. But I'm Sterling Davis of Ethosty Property Management, right? So we're a full service, single family, small multifamily property manager here in Indy. Our goal is our mission is to enhance the quality of our community, right? So we are really, I kind of look at us like a grassroots organization, right? We try to really impact our community through managing and helping people buy assets here locally.
Yeah. Awesome. So, Sterling, what's your, not to put you on the spot here with your number and then I got it, how many doors are about how many doors?
Oh God, the number that everybody can. So
you guys are like at 5,000 yet? Or is that?
Yeah. No. I fired too many owners to be there. So we're, I think last check, we're at 450 doors, right? I always say door counts are kind of like, people lie about door counts like people's other things that they lie about, right? I
can say that I did 300 deals last year, but I lost money on 15 of those deals.
Exactly.
So do they really count?
Does it really matter? Like, how much profit do you make? That's what we need to start making into the norm. Like, hey, how profitable are you?
Yeah. So yeah, and we can dig into that on this episode. Of basically, is for investors, how actually profitable can you be as a buy and hold investor and stuff like that? And what does that really look like? Just because you have you're getting $1,000 rent, what are you actually pocketing? What are you actually putting in your pocket and stuff? Which that's the big number. So, Joe, let me turn it over to you real quick. So, give us a little bit of your just background of kind of how you what you got going on with PMI and your business in itself.
Yeah, thanks so much, Brian. So I'm Joe Atha with PMI Indianapolis. So we're a franchise. We've got about 300 offices across the country right now. Through the franchise, we operate about 43,000 doors. My office itself, I have about 300 here in central Indiana. And we actually have a pretty big territory. I manage all the way up to Fort Wayne. We do Newcastle and Muncie. And we have probably 60% of our properties here in Marion County in Indianapolis. So we're all about technology. Like, we use and adopt the latest and greatest technology. Every 6 months we go through and do a check on where we're at. And we're really geared towards out-of-state investors who, need to invest or want to invest in the Indianapolis market. And they need a lot of visibility and technology so that they can see exactly what's going on within their portfolios here. So that's a little bit about us.
I love it. Mentioning that as just systems and processes and having those things in place, and then just like what's happening next and what's the next thing that can really help your business. It's such a huge thing. So, Elisha, let's go to you. So, give us a little update on kind of what's going on with you, and kind of take us through kind of your progression of like kind of what you were doing when you with your group and what you're doing with your property management and stuff.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, Brian. So I am Elisha Drake, View Property Group. I also happen to be a member of the Simple Wholesaling team. So it basically, I started in, 4 years ago, just kind of started word of mouth, had some investors that had some properties, and looked to me to manage their properties, and they told someone who told someone who told someone, and I ended up growing over the 4 years to about 600 doors. The most rapid growth actually happened within a period of about 6 months. So I only had 300 doors at that point, and then went to 600. COVID hit and lots of things happened, and just kind of decided maybe I'll go in a little bit different direction. Property management's hard. It's a hard thing to do. And so, it was just one of those, just a change that I decided I would go in a little bit different direction. And so then I joined up with a simple team, and I'm an investor myself, so I manage my own properties, obviously. But yeah, that's kind of the progression.
So awesome. And that's why I appreciate you guys so much. And why I love picking your guys' brains, and why I don't mind buying you a drink or lunch or something every now and then, because property management is something I would never want to do. It's something I'm not good at. When somebody says, oh, I can't make this payment, I'm like, oh, okay, what can I do to help you out? That's who I am. And that's not good as a property manager or anything. But Elisha, let me talk to you about, let's start with you on this one, of just like, one of the big questions I want to talk about is, what can investors do on their own to basically set their property manager up for success? So whether it's they're turning over one property to you or a portfolio or whatever it may be, but what are some things that an investor can do to set their property manager up for success and make that transition pretty easy for them?
Disclaimer, she can say whatever she wants now, because she has no, like, she's like, hey, when she's out the game, she's like, listen here, she can start name dropping people, like.
She's going to give them bad advice to make it worse for you guys, make it a little harder on you guys.
I'm going to start typing to you. Just say exactly what I need you to say on my end.
I'm going to have Sterling's prompter on the screen. So, I think the biggest thing that I would recall being an issue is that oftentimes when we're given properties, they're not really in condition for a tenant. So their contractor may have failed to finish some items, or maybe it was more of a cosmetic rehab when really it should have been more than a cosmetic rehab. And so we run into maintenance, and it takes a while to stabilize not only a new tenant in general, but then it also to have those issues with those properties on top of that can cause that first few months to be a little straining for all parties, the tenant, the property manager, and the owner. So I do feel like that would be, from my perspective, the number one thing is making sure that that property is truly ready for the manager. Because, in my case, I didn't oversee rehabs. It's not something that I offered. And so I ended up kind of being forced into that role. And it wasn't the role that I really should have been in. And then the owners are frustrated because they're having quite a large number of work orders that first few months. And then they're frustrated because their cash flow is gone. And the issue really is that should have been in their numbers to begin with. And that, quite frankly, should have been done prior to me taking on the property. So that's the number one thing that my input on that.
Yeah, and I'm always surprised at how many, investors themselves actually don't know what's actually what's truly going on with their properties. You might see a little thing of like, oh, they did a cosmetic rehab, but it could have been a little bit deeper. But that investor really might not have known that that's what they should have done, or just been, they were kind of told by somebody that like, oh, this is all you need, and things like that. So that gets tricky and stuff. So, Joe, how about you? What's one of those things that maybe an investor can do when they're turning over a couple properties to you, or ready to have you start managing their portfolio? What are some things that really help you out to make you successful when they're turning those things over?
Yeah. So for me, I think it's understanding the agency relationship that we're going to have, and that as your property manager, we have that fiduciary responsibility to use your funds the right way, and to not try and make too many of the little decisions. I see investors that get caught up in the weeds, and they want to make decisions on things. For example, they want to set their own pet policy per each different property they have, or they want to make decisions on which tenants get placed in their building versus letting our screening process run and letting us make the decision. And there's so many things that we have built into process that are designed to help protect our clients from litigation and different negative things that can happen when you're renting a property, that if you try and make too many decisions or get too in the weeds, you don't have the experience or the knowledge of a large group of licensed people who do have that experience in making the decisions. So
yeah. I'm sure you guys have all throughout your years have gotten many suggestions or advice on how you should operate and do some property management. So I think back to my teaching days of I had a lot of parents that knew how to teach a lesson better than I did, and I would listen to them and take that in and consider it. But I'm going to do what's I think is best for the whole group of kids and things. As you guys are going to do what's best for the whole portfolio and what's best for not just your investor, but also the tenant and your business and everything. There's a lot of things to consider. So, Sterling, what are some things? I saw you pull out a notebook. You might have a lot of notes ready to go on this. Or something.
I was like, wait a minute. Let me go back to the archive of what everybody said is absolutely true. I don't want to beat a dead horse. I think maintenance is definitely important, and pre-rehab is important. I think what Joe is talking about is very important, of understanding the agency relationships. I think it would be vital for me to park right there. I think it's one of those things that is misunderstood, the role of what a property manager is. The role of a property manager is we're an extension of you. We are not now working as the investor. We are now working as somebody separate than the investor, but we are working as an extension of you. So oftentimes I think property managers, especially in the residential sector, because I find that how people in the commercial sector manage versus the residential sector is different, right? So they take on some of that responsibility when it comes to profit, loss, things like that. None of the three of us on here takes the responsibility of your profitability. We can try to protect against your profitability. We can try to make sure your asset is protected, but it is not our design as how we're structured to protect against your profitability. And I think that is something that is hard to understand, right? Because at the end of the day, we're acting as an extension of you, and we have to kind of find where does that line start, where we are the extension versus where you need to pick back up, right? Yeah. And you need to kind of take responsibility as an owner, right? So, I think the hardest part inside a property manager, when you bring on one of the properties for our investors, is understanding that we are a partner of you, and we can be an extension of you. But when it comes to, sorry, is my coming out? Can you hear me?
Gotcha. You're good. Yeah.
Okay. When we start doing things from leasing to maintenance and different things, we are only acting as an extension. And like Joe said, that extension is set up to be able to protect you from yourself, so we don't, disclose what happens inside the screening process so that we don't get in trouble for fair housing, but we're only an extension. So, I think it's important and imperative that we understand what that extension and guidelines are.
Yeah. So Sterling, just to kind of elaborate on that a little bit, is that probably one of the biggest misconceptions you think when people are, bringing on a property manager or, want to even manage on their own even, and then turn it over to a property manager, whatever that is. Do you feel like that's one of the biggest misconceptions of people starting off of where that relationship is, what that relationship is with the property manager, or is there another misconception that kind of stands out a little bit even more than that?
I think it's the biggest one that costs the most money, right?
Yeah.
In the sense of what I mean by that is I think when people think they add a property manager, they alleviate risk because of now the property manager is going to be handling my maintenance, so I shouldn't have maintenance. Or because the property manager is going to be handling my vacancy, I shouldn't have vacancy. And we can do things to alleviate some of those things. But at the end of the day, I think this is what it comes down to. We don't get the profitability when it comes to refinancing the house or selling the house, and nor will we take the loss when you lose that money. So it's really understanding, and I think people have a misconception that us as property managers should kind of lean on that risk. At the end of the day, what property managers are in the simplest form is we collect rent, we lease out your property, and we take incoming calls for you. The risk is still on the burden of the owner. So that's why owners need to still be engaged. That's why owners need to understand their own accounting processes, making sure that their profitability, because at the end of the day, it's not, this sounds crazy. Like, I mean, and this is going to probably ruffle a lot of feathers, but residential property managers are not set up to look at your profitability.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing is I see with a lot of, buy and hold investors that they kind of, when they have that property manager, they kind of put on that thing of like, oh, I don't have to manage them. They're going to do their own thing. And be like, no, I don't care what it is. You're going to still you have to manage who's ever managing whatever it is if you want to be successful on your own. And with that, there comes into a lot of things too, of like, you want to manage your property manager, but also you need to have your own. We kind of talked about this on the rehab one too, of just like basically one of my first hires is always that financial person, whether it's an accountant, whether it's a fractional CFO or any of those things. I'm not going to rely on Sterling to make my financial decisions based off of property manager. I'm going to have, rely on my financial team or that whoever I'm building my business in. Even if I'm a one-man show and I have 5 rental portfolios, I'm still going to reach out to my accountant or my tax advisor or my fractional CFO to help me with those decisions, not rely on what Elisha or Joe or Sterling says.
And why that matters, so I can just tie it in a knot real quick, is because at the end of the day, this is what we're faced with. You have a maintenance request that comes in and it's a water leak or something like that. Let's say it's non-life threatening, but it changes the condition of the property and you are already at a negative $5,000 loss. Well, it's our job to protect the asset and make sure that the asset is protected. As an investor, it's your job to make sure that your asset, like what Elisha was talking about, is absolutely true. You need to make sure that on the front end, those things are taken care of. And then on the back end, some of those things might be alleviated. But when we start talking about that maintenance request, my job is to make sure that maintenance request is fulfilled and fixed.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where our kind of roles kind of come to a conflict where they're like, Sterling, I can't afford this right now. Like, what's going on with this house? Should we kick the tenant out? Well, one, I think it's a couple of things there. I think one, we need to get it taken care of because at the end of the day, we said we're going to provide a house to the people, then we need to do that. But two, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So you might not.
That's what buy and hold investing is for. It's not for what's going to happen tomorrow. It's for what's going to happen 10 years from now, 20 years down the road and stuff. So yeah. Joe, let's turn this over to you. Like, let's say you're, kind of off of what Sterling was saying a little bit, but what are some of those misconceptions or what big misconception that you see off of maybe a new buy and hold investor as you're starting to manage their portfolio? Maybe they have a couple properties or they're starting to grow and they want to grow. What's one of those misconceptions that maybe stand out to you?
Yeah. So one of the questions I get a lot is, Joe, how do you determine what my rents are? And that launches me into a conversation about, look, we will advise you on what market rent is on your property. Ultimately, you have the business plan. You know what you purchased the property for. Most cases, I don't even know what you bought it for and what your upfront expenses are. So you've got to have this business plan put together to understand, I'm an expense, but I'm also an asset in that business plan. And it's up to you what did you have in your business plan to have your market rent set at? What did you count on getting? And let's start there and see if that lines up with market and if we can get a little more or if your expectations are off.
Yeah.
So, I think that's a misconception that my clients have, is that we build this business plan or this business model for them. And we're more of an executor of the things that need done within that business plan, not the financial advisor on the business plan. Yeah.
So Elisha, on that note of how do you as a property manager, how do you go about that? Like kind of, when your tenants are your owners are reaching out to you and saying like, well, what should rent be? Or what do you think rent can be? Or can I get this? And things, how do you advise them on that? If then it turns out like, oh man, I couldn't get 900 for this property. We're going to have to bump it down to 850. Well, at least you said 900. How do you deal with those conversations? And because they're going to happen, right?
Yeah, and oftentimes they happen when the owner sets the rent instead of the management company setting the rent, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So we typically the conversation is I explain to them what we can get for rent, and that's actually not going to work. And that may be because they did not maybe quite get their numbers right, or the rehab went a little bit more than they expected, or whatever the case might be. And so now we're trying to push rents. And I always let them know, hey, I'm happy to push the rents. I feel like we're going to be here and this is where we're going to end up. And if we do that, you're going to lose a lot of that initial hitting the market. If you hit it too high, you certainly can reduce it, but then you're also going to lose some interest as well.
Yeah.
So, it's completely up to them if they want to go in and they don't agree with my market analogy, then I am happy to go higher, and we'll just kind of see how it goes. But I let them know that I don't think it's going to work out.
Yeah.
But we can try it. I'm open to trying it. So
yeah, this is one of those things too. I think as an investor, this is something that I'm always going to have. I'm going to have this conversation on the front end of all this stuff. Like listening to the three of you, you guys all have different strategies of how how you want to operate your business, how you did operate your business, stuff like that. One of those questions is, hey, are you going to help me, set the rents, or are you going to leave that up to me, or will you do that for me? Or, hey, how much a part of my financial plan can I count on you to be? Or can you help me come up with this business plan? If Joe says, hey, you're going to have to come up with your business plan and I'm going to execute it for you, that's one type of property manager. That person that's like, yeah, I want to be in the business. I want to be involved in your business. I want to help you out, and I can do that. Somebody might have that as part of their business, but that's part of that front end conversations and things you need to know about your property manager. And then also, how much of a fit are you with that, or how much of that property manager is a fit with you and what you want to be able to do to be able to reach your goals. So I think that's huge. So
yeah, I kind of look at it like, I tell people this on a lot of investor calls I have. I'm like, when you look at, I used to have Elisha, and I feel like every call they'd be like, well, I'm looking at you and you got, I'm like, oh God, right? So when I start looking at it, I tell people, this is what I tell people. If y'all want to know how I sell against you two, right? So I say, we all have the same thing, right? Like we all have technology, but do you like us? Like, you know what I mean? Like, can I stand you? Can you stand me to be in business together? Right? Like, because at the end of the day, if I don't like you, I'm not going to do business with you. And if you don't like me or like whoever's running my team, then we're not going to be in business together. Right?
Yeah.
So that's one part. But also the other part of that equation is something I call the cycle of suck. Right? The cycle of suck is the idea of property management where we are property managers and the owners do a half-butt job on the rehab, like Elisha talked about. And then we do a great job because we're all awesome on this call. Like I can't think that we would ever do anything bad. So we place a great tenant in there, right? And that great tenant goes into this house that had a poorly done rehab to it. And then they know who. They know the owner because the owner's the person managing the property. No, they know Efasti, they know PMI, they know View, and they say View sucks, or Efasti sucks, or PMI sucks because this house is not up to our standard, right? And so that is the essence of what we're fighting against, is that people do not know Mr. and Mr. Owner, they know us. So that's why Joe has a 32-step process to lease. And that's why he has all these different, that crate behind him right there. That's all his processes, right? Like, and that's why it works, because the cycle of suck. Then they go to Google and say, he sucks, da 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 da, and I don't know who the owner is, right? So the cycle of success starts with us being as early as possible involved with your decision making and being able to influence those decisions as we can, right? But need to understand the reason why Joe says no to your request to do whatever and change his lease agreement is because he knows it works. He knows the Kool-Aid tastes good. He knows the KFC recipe is legit. Like, we don't need to add hot sauce to it. So at the end of the day, why are we trying to change something when they don't know who you are? So if your maintenance man goes over and cusses out the tenant, they don't know that they're an extension of you. They know that they're an extension of Efasti. Now your drunk maintenance man who didn't take his shoes off, who didn't flush the toilet when he peed in the toilet at the tenant's house is now a reflection of Ethosty, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we say, no, we won't change anything. We're going to do everything exactly how we've been doing it. If you don't like it, you can leave.
Yeah. Because ultimately,
And I'm actually going to piggyback off of that just a bit, because I was not doing that. And that is probably why I decided to jump out of property management. It's because I was trying to make everyone happy and adjusting, and making some exceptions to the rule and doing those things. And Sterling told me on a call, and someone else also told me, another property manager, Harvey, they said, it's only a matter of time before you're going to get tired of doing that, because it just doesn't work, and they were right. It really, you have to have the process, and you have to stick to the process. And if you don't meet that owner's expectations, then maybe they'll need to find, someone, who maybe is operating at a smaller scale or something like that. Yeah.
Well, Harvey told me, so I just reiterated what he told me. He told me on the call, he said, before there was a Joe and Elisha and Sterling, there was always a Harvey. That's why I say no. I was like, all right.
And that's really what it comes down to, is like, there's a reason that you guys built the process the way you did. There's a reason that you are working with the people you want to, because that's the process, and those are the systems, and those are the people that your energy fits with. Once you deviate from that pours more energy away from you, and it's going to take more effort to running your business, and you get burnt out, you get stressed out, you're going to be short with an owner on a conversation, because that's what happens and stuff. So let's change the dynamics of this podcast a little bit. Let's put a little positive spin on here a little bit on this stuff. I want you guys to right now think of your ideal avatar, your perfect owner that you guys have, that owner that you love working with, that follows your process, follows your systems and stuff like that. What is that owner doing, or what is that investor doing to be successful? Is it as simple as they're sticking to your process and sticking to your system, or is there something else that stands out to you that person's doing when they are having you manage their properties? Joe, let's start with you on this one, man. You're on mute, Joe.
I've got a couple here that come to mind, and I think what they do is they watch their reports in their portal and all of the inspections and the things that we do, and then they make plans based on the information we give them. So, I'll get a text message saying, hey, I saw that inspection report. Let's get this and this and this done, and I don't want to do this right now. And I'm like, cool, we can work with that. So we go out and execute everything, and then they're keeping an eye on all of the information we're giving them, making some of those big picture decisions and leaving the small ones, to us, and not getting in the weeds on those. So, just, they really enjoy the business of rentals and real estate, but they don't have the patience to deal with tenants.
Yeah. So that's a good point. I like that a lot. They do have a passion for it, and they want to be in that and stuff like that. They just need a little bit of help, and that's good. And then managing that stuff is huge. So Sterling, how about you?
No, that was really good, actually. I would say, to piggyback on what Joe said, I think it's people that understand that this is a partnership and what that extension is, right? Like, I know I keep saying that, but understanding that if maintenance comes in, that they build that plan. But not only do they build that plan, in a partnership, it's me and my wife's anniversary today, right? And I'm spending it with you guys. But inside of that partnership or that relationship, it doesn't work if every time I have to take out the trash, me and her are blaming each other, like, well, you the one supposed to take out the trash. No, I took out the trash last time. You took it out. So it's understanding the roles and responsibilities and not looking to place blame, but to try to place actions into how do we move forward, right? I think those are people that I love to work with. is kind of level-headed people. Like, I don't like people, ideally, we always say financially stable, emotionally stable, right? People that aren't too high on the highs and too lows on the lows. They're kind of just steady eddies, right? Like, I have some people that, like, they call me and I'm like, when it's a win, it's, yeah, man, let's go. And I'm like, oh, man.
Let's buy 20. Let's do this.
Exactly.
And then the next week, it's like, I'll sell them all. Yeah.
Right. Like, I know, like, it's an even killness to it, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty steady.
Yeah.
And those are the people that are great.
Yeah, and we all know that, man. If you're in real estate investing in general, it's going to be a roller coaster. You're going to have some highs, you're going to have some lows, and some curves, and some stuff like that. You're going to lose your hat when you go around, a curve at one time or another. So those things are going to happen. So, Elisha, how about you? If you think of that ideal investor, what's that one thing that maybe they're doing that really kind of separates them and makes it they're having success with it, but also you enjoy work with them because of?
Yeah, I think it was just letting me do my job and letting the team do their job. Certainly I think that you always have to, like you said, manage over, people that are managing for you and that sort of thing. And I understand that. I certainly do. But I think, going off of what Joe and Sterling said as well, we're not actually, employees, we're more partners. Yeah. And I think that that's really important to understand is that, if they treat, us as partners, then we certainly, appreciate that. And we will go above and beyond. It does become a little cumbersome and difficult when, you're trying to get something accomplished and you're being asked about it, as you're accomplishing it, and maybe just taking a step back and giving us that opportunity. And certainly if we don't fulfill, your requirement, reach out and talk to us about it, but let's give us an opportunity first. So I think that would be my number one.
Yeah, I love that. So important. I like that a lot. So great stuff. Great insights, you guys. Before we wrap up this episode, I got one last question for you. It's going to be a little kind of rapid fire, and I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit with this one. But I want two things from you on this question. If I want to know, what is that neighborhood that you get really excited about when your investor says, "Hey, I got a new property. I just bought a property. I want you to manage it." What's that property or what's that neighborhood that you get really excited about? And then what's that neighborhood in Indy that you get like, "Oh man, gosh, they bought another one there." So what's that like awesome neighborhood, and what's the one that you maybe get not so excited about? Sterling, we'll start with you here, man.
Easy. So I just say in general, if somebody gives me a Vinyl Village house, oh, let's go. Like, like in the suburbs, Avon, whatever it is, whatever suburb for the most part, I'm like, all right, we can do this pretty easily. Yeah. Because, they've been built before 1990 normally. Those are easy. The ones that I'd be like, is I had a long Facebook post about this some time ago, is Sobro. I think there's a misguided notion that Sobro is this great whole neighborhood, and I think it can be with realistic expectations. I look at Sobro as a great flipping market. So when you start talking about now with the flips going up, you're getting ARVs above 200,000, trying to match that type of rate on the rental market. Anything above 1,000, you can look right now on Zillow. I mean, it's on there for 60 days, 45 days, more than 30 days. And those are the signs that tell me, something's wrong. What's wrong is the expectation that, that it's going to go fast, right? There's a lot of buyers in that market. And so I say that not to say that we don't, because I have one on Roslyn right now. If you're looking to rent it out, it's a great rental property, but it does become a strain a little bit just because of the expectations.
Yeah, I kind of view that Sobro area too. It's kind of expanded. Like the Fountain Square is not just literally Fountain Square. Like everything down around there is considered Fountain. Same as Sobro. It can be like down like beside the fairgrounds. All of a sudden it's Sobro. Not really. So yeah.
The fairgrounds is not just Sobro.
Yeah. So, Elisha, how about you? What's that neighborhood you get excited about, and the neighborhood that you're like, I don't know about that one?
Yeah, so I'm right with Sterling. If it's a Vinyl Village, I mean, I am probably still going to manage it today.
You better be careful saying that. You're going to get some calls after this.
What? So, there goes my book of business.
No, but the Vinyl Village, anything in the suburbs primarily, is great. I would say an area that I would struggle with is the fairgrounds. I took over some properties at the fairgrounds, and I had 3 murders that year. And so, yeah, and so that was just a tough year, seeing that happen, and it was, all within, a block or 2 of each other. So that's a tough area I think for me. Yeah.
Yeah. So Joe, how about you, man?
Man, I love Hamilton County. So I live in Fishers. My office is in Noblesville. And I just get excited about the north side up here in Hamilton County, and some of the appreciation values on single family homes have been really, really great. So, my clients are able to be profitable at some of my most profitable properties up here. And I love doing things in my own community where I live and work.
Nice.
So I get excited up here. I'll tell you the conversation that makes me cringe a little bit is when I pick up the phone to talk to a new owner and they say, I got a property under contract. It's closing next week, and I need to know if you will manage in this area. That tells me that they've already tried with a couple people and been turned down. And
so that's just already setting you up. Yeah.
Those are like, it makes me wonder what type of diligence was done in the purchasing process in the neighborhood. And it's usually an out of state, somebody who just doesn't know the neighborhood, doesn't know what it is.
Yeah.
So I know I get a lot of those on the east side, just north of 70 that are, they just don't know what the neighborhoods are like.
Yeah. So I think that's a big thing and I always, talk to investors about this is like, it's okay to have more than one property manager based off the areas that you're investing in. Some people are going to be good in some areas and some people are going to be stronger in others, and everything is a little bit different. Somebody renting something in, Broad Ripple, it's going to be a different market than somebody that's renting stuff in like Riverside. It's just a different feel. It's a different, clientele. It's a different market. So that's some of the stuff you got to keep in mind. So everybody, I thank you so much for joining me on this episode and digging into what investors can really do to kind of help them be successful working with property managers and what they can be doing. I know I'm going to have you guys right back. We're going to do another episode on this next one. We're going to dig into a little bit more of your businesses and building a business based off of property management. I know who in the world would want to do it, but these 3 have done it very well, and we're going to kind of dig into what they're doing. So with that, we'll get out of here on this episode of the Indy Investor Pod, and we'll see you guys next time.